Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of South Bay Sports Radio. On today's episode, I sit down with Scott Altenberg, head coach of Gardena Serra's football team. Scott and I talked about his football beginnings and why he chose to attend Bishop Montgomery, what took him to UCLA, coaching under Redondo's Gene Simon, and how influential he was, the lean years at Serra, that 2009 CIF title game against Oaks Christian, and the Easter eggs he planted throughout the season, and how Serra athletics depend on multi-sport athletes. Let's tune in. Hello, everyone. You are listening to another episode of South Bay Sports Radio. I'm here today with Serra football head coach Scott Altenberg. Scott, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Nick. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's talk about your football beginnings and when you fell in love with football.
Well, I mean, for me, football started at the beginning. My dad was a football player. He played at Serra High School. He played at UCLA. I had a cup of coffee with the Washington Redskins. Was Football was always in his life when I played Pop Warner and the whole thing through. I've always loved the game. I mean, it's one of those games where you have so many different types of people. Like you have big guys, little guys. You have kickers and receivers and linebackers. You don't see that in any other sport. So I've just always loved the game, and I've made it my life.
How would you describe your football experience at Bishop Montgomery?
So when growing up, I played Pop Warner and Palos Verdes. Or I was a little quarterback. I was tiny. I was 5'2" in the 8th grade. Used to have to jump to throw the ball, but I was always a quarterback. I was always little, and then I finally grew right after in the summer of my 8th grade year, almost to 6'2", and I wanted to, at the time, the hill schools were Palos Verdes, Marillette, and Rolling Hills, and they weren't, I just wanted more, and at the time, Bishop Montgomery was in the top league in the land. They played Modern Day, they played Servite, Bishop Amat, so I thought, well, that's the place to go. And so that's where I went, and I loved it. I started as a freshman, a quarterback on the freshman team, and then my sophomore year, I was a quarterback. But 2 or 3 games in, I got pulled up to varsity wide receiver, and I started playing and starting at wide receiver. I think in the league, I remember my first game was at Bishop Amat High School. And Stephon Pace and Eric B. I mean, it was crazy, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we weren't as successful back then at Bishop because we were in a really tough league. I mean, we were good going into that, but I think we always did really well early in the season, would win a lot of preseason games, and then we'd get to league and run into Servite and all those guys. And but I loved it. I played my junior year. I played. I was starting quarterback. My senior year did real well. Was all area and everything, all league. I also kicked, played a little free safety, did whatever they needed me to do, and I just, it was just a fun sport for me because I just something I always wanted to do, and I always wanted to play quarterback. And my dad actually helped coach a little on the Bishop Montgomery staff when I had already kind of gone on to varsity, and they asked him to help, and so it was neat to have him there. So it was a good experience. I mean, we didn't win a lot. I think my senior year we were 5-5. My junior year, I want to say maybe 4-6. I don't know, but we played really good teams, and I understood. I think at that point what competition meant, and kind of served me from then on. So I had a great experience at Bishop. I like I said, it's something that I think we all understand. Like I had to coach Andy Zabatura for my years there, and he was very much like a military guy, and very kind of and he did a lot of really good things, but a lot of the stuff I didn't agree with. So I think it kind of I don't know, like molded me in the way I was going to be a coach. I understood, I was very aware of what didn't work, I think, for our team, and what did work. And it got me a lot. And I didn't realize it till later that there was that much, that I learned from that experience playing at Bishop. So.
Now, your dad played at UCLA, but when it came to college options, what were your options and what ultimately drew you to UCLA?
So it's kind of an interesting deal because I was almost like a 1.62 quarterback. I was a runner. I ran the ball a lot, and I could throw also. In more today, I would have been perfect, right? But back then, everything was, quarterbacks who just drop back and throw. There wasn't a lot of the running element unless you're running the wishbone, right? And so there wasn't like I was recruited by Eastern Washington, Northern Arizona, Santa Barbara before they went, they went away, and even the service academies, Army and Navy, and I was just, because I could run, and so, but in the end, I really wanted to go to UCLA. I grew up a UCLA fan. My dad, everybody. I think I went to UCLA games when I was still in diapers. I mean, it was just that kind of thing. So I accepted a walk-on spot at UCLA and got into a great school. And yeah, I don't regret it. But now I could have probably gone somewhere else and got actual playing time and everything. But in the end, it was kind of one of those things where I just I wanted to go to UCLA. So that was kind of what it was.
You begin coaching at the junior varsity level at Bishop Montgomery in 1993, while
Right.
you're at LMU going for your master's degree. What
Correct.
went into that decision to begin coaching?
Well, it wasn't quite like that. So what happened was I was at UCLA and I was walking, I was doing stuff for 2 years, and then I got hurt and it was hard for me to continue. So I kind of hung up football, which was hard. And then I was still at UCLA when I started Bishop. They needed help and I went over there and I mean, I fell in love with coaching. I mean, it was one of those things where, I mean, I was with the kids and I was teaching and it just, I went to UCLA to go to be a lawyer or to be in politics or something. That was my goal. And then I get to, just on the side, I was bartending at Gladstone. I was, and I'm like, well, I got some time. And I went and coached 2 years, I think, at Bishop. And it was crazy how much I loved it. And then I remember going back to my mom and my dad. I was just like, hey, I think I want to be a coach. And they're like, what? Why you want to do that? Like, they're like, that's awesome, but come on, man, thought you're going to go be a senator or something. And so I don't know. I think your career sometimes finds you, and this is what happened. And I knew it wasn't going to be, the most lucrative career, but it was something that I loved. And we did well at Bishop when I was there. I think my first JV team went 9-1, and my second one went like 8-2. We played for the elite title both times. It was a really fun experience, and so I spent a lot of that time thinking, that was something that was hard because again, you're thinking as a young guy, 20, whatever I was, 20 something year old, I'm thinking like, oh, you got to make the money and this, that. But man, what I felt when I went out there coached, I just knew that I had to do that. So I give a lot of credit to my time at Bishop because that really kind of set me down that path. And then I just kind of never looked back.
You told me that you began coaching at Serra in 95 with
Yes.
a 1-year stint at Redondo in between.
So, okay. So here's what happened. So I come out of graduating from UCLA and I'm bartending at Houston's at the time. And so I said, you know what? I want to go into this coaching thing. I want to do it full. I put my app in at Bishop Montgomery. I put it in at Serra, a bunch of my dad actually said, listen, if you're gonna explore this, go check out my alma mater, Serra, right? And so I put my app in everywhere, and the only place that actually called me was Serra. And they called me and I went and I sat down and I was just gonna be I just came in to coach the varsity and started off kind of as a kind of coordinating the offense and I worked with them and it just while it was an amazing experience because I also got the teaching job to which where I found that I love teaching a lot and that once I started at Sarah teaching I've never stopped. I've been the same in 95 and now it's been 31 years in the classroom and I love teaching as well. And so kind of one of those things where it's perfect. But the coach, Charles Nash, was a great guy, good coach. We didn't like, I didn't, we had different philosophies. He was really much, what he wanted to do wasn't kind of what I was really good at. So I ended up at that time actually going to get my master's the next year instead of continuing coaching. And then a year later, I decided, I was still finishing my master's. And so I think I had the date wrong on when my master's was completed. But the next year, I said, well, I got to get back into coaching, see if I, really want to do this. And I went and applied at Redondo with Gene Simon, and I went and coached with him for 1 year because, I was finishing up my master's, and the head coach at Serra, this was, like I said, a good man, but wasn't, just kind of wasn't what I wanted to do. So I coached that 1 year with Gene, and I will tell, anybody who'll listen, he's the one that really put me on this, I think, really on the path, because I was unsure. Like, I didn't have a great experience my first year at Serra. I had really good experiences at Bishop. And I thought, well, maybe this is not what I want. And I worked for Gene for 1 year at Redondo, and it was life changing. He was such a great coach. He minded the details. He was all about, relationships and figuring out how to get stuff done. He just was amazing. And at that point, I said, okay, yeah, this is it. We had a great year that year too at Redondo. We went to the semifinal. We lost to Maricosta in the rain at El Camino. I remember that. And it was, and so I went back after that year, and I talked to Gene and told them how much I loved it, and they said, okay. And they had a job all lined up for me at Redondo, and I was going to, get a teaching job there and join the stuff. And I was like, that was it. So I went back to Serra High School to tell them, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do. And then the principal at the time was Father Sal Pilato, said, nope, you're not leaving. You're going to be our next head coach here. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't do that. He goes, well, the current head coach is only going to be here for 1 more year. I want you to stay, work with him, and then the next year you'll be the head coach. And so I said, okay. And I didn't go to Redondo, and I went to Serra High School. And in the interim, actually, before I even went to Redondo, I actually applied for the head coaching job at Bishop Montgomery. And that was kind of an interesting one. I want to say that was like 96-ish, maybe 90, yeah, 96, 97. And I applied for that job, and there was 80 something applicants, and I got to the final three. And it was really cool because I wasn't that old. I wasn't, I was mid 20s. So I got all the way down to the final three at that. And I didn't get it. And I remember that I was so disappointed, but they told me, they said, hey, you had really good presentation. We really think you're going to be a really good coach, and you're just, maybe too young for us right now. And I totally understood that. They give it to Mike Sanders, who's a great coach. Came from Thousand Oaks. But I went from there, and then I ended up 2 years later, or a year and a half later, getting the Serra head coaching job, and the rest is history.
You touched on Gene and how much he taught you, but give me a little bit more about how instrumental he was as to your development as a coach.
So, and I've been around a lot of coaches. I mean, I spent 1 year earlier, with Steve Butler, who was a fantastic coach. A lot of guys. My dad was a really good coach, and so there's a lot of people. But when I worked for Gene at Redondo, it was kind of a time in my life where I wasn't sure, and so I just wanted to spend a lot of time figuring out what it was all about. And with Gene, the only reason I went there was they're the only ones that like really answered my call, really, and so, but I met him, I worked with him, and I mean, he worked so hard. He worried about, like, his thing was about success being in the details and making sure that every part of it was exactly how we wanted it. And it really kind of struck home to me how important that was. And then the whole year, we just, we would meet, the whole staff would be at his house after games. We would, enjoy each other, and we had a great time, and we had a great year. I mean, I spent 1 year at Redondo when we went to the semis. It was really awesome. And the whole time, though, it was just about, like, if the kids know that you love them, if the kids know that you care about them, if the kids know that you want the best for them, and then you can coach them however you got to coach them, and they understand that in the end that that's where it's going to go. I think that was probably the most important thing I got from him. And so much so that, like, I brought him on staff later when he, finished at Redondo, and he worked for me for 4 years, I think, and probably like from 16 or 17 to 2020 or so. Like he worked with me. He came to work with me. I mean, he just that when I knew that he wasn't coaching, I want him there, and he's a friend, and he's a great human being, and I just think that like I owe him a lot because of the way he looked at it. It wasn't that he didn't. It wasn't about like football, and it wasn't about. I remember this other thing too. It's like you're a football coach. You're there for these kids for that. You're not a star. You're not a your days. Those days are over. This is about you coaching others to be stars. You coaching, and I really that struck home to me. Like what are we doing this for, right? And I remember that because Jim was, he was very detailed, and he would, he wouldn't let anything, people would get so frustrated at times with it because he'd be like, okay, no, we're going to do that again. We're going to get this right. But I remember we were so good because of that, because we didn't make mistakes, and I think that was big for me. That was really important to learn from someone like that. And it really did just, yeah, because my first year at Serra were very, very rough. And having that in my back pocket really kind of meant something.
When you took over this program at Serra, before that, what do you remember about, were there interviews for you for that head coaching job? I know you had applied. You had said that they had offered you the job, that you were on staff, but were there
Right.
interviews? And if there were, what do you remember about those interviews and your presentation?
Well, I mean, my interviews were, I was done at Serra. I was going to Redondo. I was gonna, I don't think I formally ever interviewed for the head job. I mean, I interviewed to be a teacher there. I interviewed to be a coach originally. I interviewed at Bishop Montgomery. I interviewed at Redondo, but I never interviewed at Serra like that. They already knew who I was. I mean, they were like, and I give, Father Pilato, a lot of credit because he knew he thought he knew what he had in me, and he wanted me. He said, you're going to be our head coach. You're going to take our program to a new place. And he wouldn't let me leave. I mean, a priest, man, they're good like that. And he had me. And I was just, it was gonna, I was gonna make more money at Redondo. I was gonna, all that stuff. But he just like, no, this is where you're supposed to be. And that was it. Like, that part, the interview part was already done. He knew what he wanted in me. Now, if you're talking about like interview process, like when I was with Bishop and, at Redondo, my focus has always been on vision. I want, I want everybody to know what we're doing, kind of thing. That was kind of my whole deal. Right.
You said your first couple years at Serra were rough, but what would best
Yeah.
describe the program when you took it over?
Well, we were, I want to say we were Division 11, maybe, and we were down there in the low ranks. And I mean, I make jokes. We were playing teams on Saturday for no, and weren't even collecting money to get in. I mean, we're playing Harvard Westlake and Mary Star and Bishop Montgomery, all great programs, but that was our league back then, and so it couldn't have been any lower at the time. And my first year we went 2-7-1. I don't know how we won the two. And it was rough. And I remember it was one day, and I was going through it a little bit because people weren't excited, because when I took over, it wasn't like the other guy wanted to necessarily leave. This was a replacement deal because it wasn't going anywhere. And so Father Pilato, the principal, understood that we needed a new direction. And so he brought me in. But there was a lot of people there that were thinking, what is this young guy like? What's he going to do? And I remember that we had this great track coach, Richard Gatlin, won a bunch of state titles, whole thing. And the one day I was there and I was, kind of pulling my hair out and I was struggling, to get things right. I think we had lost, we didn't win our first game till week 7, I think. And I was sitting there, and then he says to me, and he knew me a little bit, but didn't know me that well. He said, Scott, the sun will rise tomorrow. You're going to be okay. You're a good coach. Do it the way you want to do it. Don't reach for quick fixes right now. Do it the way you want to do it. And then my dad, who was working with me at the time, he was one of my assistants, said very similar. He said, listen, if you're going to go down doing what you want. Don't try to please others. Make the program the way you think it needs to be. And that's what I did. So we went 2-7-1 my first year. We went 5-6 my second year. And the third year, I think we went 9-2. And then my fourth year, we were 13-1 and lost in the championship game. So it just, it just kind of went. And we went from Division 11 eventually all the way to Division 1. So it was a great ride. I mean, I miss those days, back in the early times when you're trying to figure it out.
I asked you to name one of the most exciting games you've been a part of, and you named the 2009 CIF Championship against Oaks Christian. 15
Yeah.
years ago, Scott. I can hardly believe that it's been that long, but it was a 42-41 overtime win. What still stands out to you about that game?
Well, I mean, it was so again, where we came from, right? We're not a big school. I mean, we have 400 kids in our school, co-ed, so we don't, generally speaking, moving up in that level, moving all the way up like that was a stretch. Now, don't get me wrong, we had some great players, but that we had played Oaks Christian, who at the time was as good as you get, right? They had everybody. Montana's kid, Gretzky's kid, they had Will Smith's kid, and then they had all the NFL players, and they were something else. They had beaten us, so we had started to climb and get going. 06, 07, 08, and I think in 07 we were 11-1 or something, and then they beat us up in the quarters or semis, and then the next year we were 13-0, played them in the finals, and they beat us 63-30. So it's brutal. And then the following year we were 0-2 against them. They had beat us both times and wasn't even close. We get it at home, and they're number 2 in the nation ranked. They were amazing team. Had 18 guys had Division I scholarship offered, some insane number. They were fantastic. Bill Riddell was their coach. He was amazing. I mean, he had, something, he could do anything. So he was a great coach. But I'd learned the years before that we were going to get ready for this game throughout the year. So and I realized something about it, and I learned something from Bill and his staff, was they knew everything. Like, they had scouted us since, I don't know, like every game. And they knew going in those first 2 games where we lost, they knew everything we were going to do. And so it was like, I said, okay. And then this year, 09, I said, fine. So we started running some plays that were, just random plays in the middle of the season that had nothing to do with anyone, but I knew they were for Oaks Christian. So Oaks Christian would remember them in certain situations, always in big key situations, because that's generally when you see what a coach wants to do and who they are. You go to the money plays, right? The big plays in the game. You're going to see what they believe in and what they want and what they think they can do. So in those situations, I did these kind of plays that had, kind of like an Easter egg feel. I would put it out there, and then I knew that when we played them eventually in the championship, that I could work on that, and they would assume that was coming, and it was crazy, but it worked. And we ended up playing just an amazing back and forth game. And we had a play where we ran this reverse look a few times, and then we ran a double off it only in that game, and it walked in for a touchdown. And you could tell they were like, wait a minute, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. And it's just a couple different things that we did. And then we ended up kicking the extra point. They scored, we blocked theirs, and we won the game. And then we ended up going and winning the state title 2 weeks later. So it was kind of one of those Hollywood ending type games. We it's overtime, and we're on the 2-yard line, and then the rain starts coming down like slowly, and you're like, what in the world? We push it in, the place goes nuts. We kicked it was crazy. So yeah, I and still anyone who's been at that game will tell me, like, man, I was at your 09 game. If anyone sees, they'll say, it was the most amazing game ever. And you could see, like, around the track, it was, first of all, it was at home, so the place was just packed. It was like there wasn't a seat anywhere, but all the college coaches were all around, like Sark and Kiffin and Chow, and there were Carroll. They were all around the track watching the game. You could see them all. They looked like a who's who, and it was amazing. So yeah, I'm just lucky to have been a part of that one. That was such a great game. I'd have, Bill, probably he would not think it was his greatest game, but it was for us. So
And you guys had a really
Yeah.
good roster that year. I remember George Farmer
Yeah, we did.
and Robert Woods were on that team.
Yep.
But Oaks Christian running back ran for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. How tough was he to take down that game?
The national player of the year that year, Malcolm Jones. I think their quarterback threw 3 interceptions. It was like, just ask him, please, just throw it anytime, right? Because we cannot tackle Jones, and he was tough. Marquise Lee was playing for us that game, and it just was, it was one of those games. They scored, we scored, they scored, we scored. It was just, and those are the things where I think we started to kind of come up with our identity of who we are, which is this belief that this thing's never over with us, that we always think at Serra that we're gonna, we're never down, right? And you'll see our results for over the years is we haven't had a lot of games where we've just been out of it. We've always battled, even against great teams. That's been kind of our calling card. I think, that game was the microcosm of it.
We talked about George and Robert, but since you've taken over the program, Serra has produced 18 NFL products and countless others at the collegiate level. In your eyes, what's been the key to player development and getting those guys to the next level?
Well, so one of the things I'd say is we do a lot of youth camps, right? We try to get kids in, sixth, seventh, eighth graders. We do it like for about 3 months during the winter, spring. We have it on our field. All our coaches are there. We take it very seriously because we know that it's hard to get the kids into school when you have great programs in LA. I mean, amazing, the best in the country, obviously. And so what we try to do is develop a relationship with these kids and the families so that they want to come and be coached by our coaches. But the one thing I tell people when I pitch my school is that I say, listen, our kids, when they go to college, they perform, they do well. And there's a reason for that because we don't have a lot of guys. Like I said, we have 187 boys in the school total. So our kids and our team will be, our varsity will have 40 some guys tops, and of that 20 something, will, be playing a lot. Our guys have to do a lot. They have to play a lot of positions. They have to do a lot of different things. They have to have a lot of grit. They can't, they don't get put in a box where they're only a corner and they do this their whole career. And that's just not the way it is. Our weight room got recently redone a little bit, but a lot of the stuff is still from 1950. So our kids are used to having to make do and overcome. And that's kind of the way college is, right? Because not using old weights and stuff, but you get dropped in a college setting and everybody's good. So you're going to have to battle, and it maybe what you want to do isn't what's going to get you the job. So you might have to do something a little different. And I think our kids learn that because they are asked to do so much. I mean, I remember Roderick, they were talking about, the recruiters were asking me, well, does he do anything else? And I said, does he do anything else? Yeah, he does pretty much everything. Like he played running back, he played receiver, he played nickel and outside corner. He was on both kickoff carry. I mean, he'll do because we needed him to. And even when he was hurt, and he wasn't, full speed, just his presence, we would put him in things and he would do stuff to draw attention so that everyone else could do stuff. So that's kind of where I think we've been successful, and our kids get to that next level and they're able to tap into their real potential because they're used to one kind of thinking outside the box a little bit, because that's kind of what we have to. If you've ever, you've been to my games, you'll see us one week we'll have 4 wide receivers out there. The next week, we'll have 2 tight ends and a full, we'll do whatever it takes. We're going to do it, right? My saying's always been, if it ain't broke, break it, because it's going to break at some point and you need to stay ahead of the curve. So our guys are ready to move and change, and we'll scrap a game plan at halftime and do something different if it means that we can get this win. So our kids know that, and I think that serves them well at the next level.
And you've produced some pretty unique talent on both ends of the football. You talked about Marquise Lee, but Adoree Jackson and Robert Woods were both playing on both sides of the ball and were 3-sport athletes.
Yeah. That's another thing. We don't have enough boys here, so we can't only have our kids play football. So they got to go. I sent I have just a phenomenal D tackle this year, Kari Wilder. He's only a junior. And I'm like, hey, I really, basketball team needs you. He's like, and he's played in the past, so he knows how to play. He's like, oh, I don't know, coach. I go, no, they really do. He goes, all right. And so he goes out there. And now he's playing basketball. He's, 6'5", 250 or whatever. He's out there doing all. My son's the kicker on our team. He's also plays on the basketball. I mean, we don't have a choice. So we really want, I know a lot of places say, oh yeah, we want you to play multiple sports, but we live it. We have guys that play 3 sports. We have guys that, rarely, I don't know how many kids in the sports program only play 1 sport at Serra. And I just think they, when they learn to play multiple sports, it's just better for them. They learn more skills, more athleticism, how to compete. I just, I really believe in it. And so I think that's just another part of what we kind of get from our guys is that they're expected to do a lot, and that helps.
All right, it is time for rapid fire. Favorite NFL players then and now?
Dan Fouts forever. I mean, he's definitely my guy. And right now, I got to go with Herbert, Justin Herbert. I'm a Charger guy, so you can probably tell. But I love the Air Coryell. That's a lot of my offensive belief and love.
And one NFL team has to go.
Oh, the Raiders, of course. Get rid of them.
Lakers or Clippers?
Lakers. I mean, come on.
Dodgers, Angels?
I'm a Padre fan, so I guess I gotta go with the Angels. Even though I'm a big fan of Dave Roberts, I was happy he won it this year. But I guess Angels if we gotta go there.
Here's a South Bay one for you. Beach Boys or Beatles?
Oh, Beach Boys. Come on. That was my dad's, man. My dad would play that thing all the time. Oh, you say, this is where they live. You drive right by where the 105 is. Hawthorne. Oh, I love the Beach Boys.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars with not even close.
Favorite South Bay eateries and a dish that is your go-to?
Oh, well, I'm a huge fan of Hop Saint. But it's my spot. The Kolsch beer and the pork belly sandwich is just amazing.
Awesome. Scott, you've been amazing. I can't wait to do this in the future. Get some more questions, talk more shop with you. I appreciate your time. I wish you a very Merry holiday.
You got it, Nick. Thanks, bud. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Since 1999, Scott Altenberg has won 227 games during his tenure at Serra. The 2009 win broke Oaks Christian's 34-game winning streak. Malcolm Jones' senior year at Oaks, 2,470 yards and 45 touchdowns. For his career, he totaled 113 touchdowns and nearly 6,300 yards. Altenberg's dad, Kurt, caught the game-winning touchdown in 1965 against USC to send UCLA to the Rose Bowl. Serra currently has 4 alumni in the NFL: Adoree Jackson, Robert Woods, Antonio Maffei, and Matt Dickerson. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow along. You never know who we'll talk to next.